There was the music guys, but then there was just guys from Hume that just like were affiliated, never officially Mayhem, but because we was all like one, there's just like, and the spit, it just like naturally become like Mayhem. So probably like 15 to 20 of us, to be honest. But the serious ones, I don't know. I try not to be offensive if he was serious back then.
Otis Thomas, how are you doing, brother?
I'm great, you know.
Right, first and foremost, thanks a lot for taking the time out to come and be interviewed today.
Yeah, whatever I can do to support your cause. Obviously, we go way back, so I want to see you succeed.
I've been, you know, it's funny you say that because I've been looking to get you on and do this for a very long time. So do you know what I feel? Actually privileged to get to sit down with you today, man. So blessed for coming along. Let's start at the beginning. Tell me about where you were born and everything, because you're from South Manchester, born and bred, yeah?
Yeah, I grew up in an area called Hume.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different to how it was when I grew up. The area's been gentrified quite a lot, but growing up, I'd say I did love growing up in Hume, as it taught me a lot of values. It was a predominantly mixed area at the time, but there was like circles amongst circles. So there was like a lot of the black kids would chill together, a lot of the white kids would chill together, but everyone was blessed when they'd all come together at the youth clubs. But like outside of the youth clubs, like in day to day in people's houses, it was more like like a lot of the black kids chilled together and a lot of the white kids. But there was never any like racial tension or anything within the area. When I was a lot younger, there was a lot of gang activity. So seeing things from very young, I probably became a bit desensitized to certain things. So for example, I remember when I was 7 and I was walking around to my friend's house because his mum's partner at the time was due to take us boxing, and I seen like some guys like hiding from another group of guys, and they jumped off some cabins and threw a brick at them, and then the guy like pulled out a gun and let off a couple of shots, and like this was just in the daytime, and I remember just like being stood there like in awe a bit. And then about a couple of minutes later, I must have walked around onto the main street, Botham. And it's different to how it is now, but there was like a big grass patch in front of it. But it's where there's houses now, and like the guys who let off the shots was riding across, and the guys who threw the bricks was associated with the family who lived on Botham. And then one of the brothers was stood there with a crossbow, just like held in his hands, like as the guys rid past, and there was like loads of kids in the street, and this was just like broad daylight. And I think just things like that just were kind of like the norm around back then in the 90s. I also remember another incident. I think I was a bit younger than 7 this time. I was probably about 5, and me and my friend Paul was walking to the shop, and there was a man lay on the floor, and I think he'd been stabbed. Could have seen like his t-shirt filled with blood, and he was asking us for help. But it's like we didn't even know what to do. We walked to the shop, carried on about our business, getting our mix-ups, whatever he was buying. Walked back home, and then he was still there, but by the time we come back, someone was there to assist him. So I don't know the outcome of that situation. For all we know, we could have died. But like, I think seeing these kind of things, you just become accustomed to them, and you hear about these things all the time in the 90s, and it just became normalized, and it was just like general day-to-day living, especially as a kid, as such a young child, like seeing these type of things. It could have been traumatizing.
And that was one of the questions that I was going to actually ask you next, in terms of like, how did that impact on you? Did it become like, was it normalized to you at that point in time? And do you reflect back on it now and you think, well, actually, hang on a minute, was that normal for me to witness that? But at that point in time, that was just your normal everyday life. Do you reckon that was the case, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely played, it had an impact on like the group of young people that was growing up in that area, like me and my friends, especially the ones that ended up going into gang life, because it was just a normal way of living and just a natural progression into things that they've witnessed. I think as we got a bit older and became teenagers, the area kind of changed in terms of what gang was predominantly in the area, and certain people I was growing up with kind of got infiltrated and became members of these gangs. And like I For example, one of my friends that I grew up with at 14, I remember him asking me to hold his gun, to keep his gun at my house, but because I was very strong-minded as a youth, I didn't feel to give in to peer pressure, and I knew that wasn't the way that my life was meant to go. So I was seeing certain things happen and people getting shot and everything around, like just a couple of years older than me. Like it wasn't what I was aspiring for. I had high aspirations. Like I could see a pathway to becoming a professional footballer. So I knew like gang life wasn't for me. I'd say like football and music probably saved me around them times.
How easy was it for you growing up, you know, back then with like the gang activity and everything, and you witnessing stuff like that, for you to actually say, do you know what, this isn't for me? Because you made that point and you said, I've got like higher aspirations and everything like that. Yeah, how easy was it for you to kind of like steer away from the gangs and say, do you know what, I do actually want to play football, or I do want to do the music thing instead?
I think what played a big role in me being able to aspire towards other things was having affiliations with people from the school but outside of school. So for example, in school I had two best friends, Justin and Lee. So Lee was my white friend that was from Witherton, and from the age of 14 we'd always play for like the same football teams. So sometimes I'd stay at his house at the weekends, and I think that defo helped like keep me out of trouble, because at the weekends would when we're not in school, we've got a lot more free time to where you can get up to a lot more mischievous activities, and because there wasn't no teams in our area in Hume, you'd have to go outside of the area. So at that time I was playing for a team called Urmston, so I was like outside of the area, and I think that defo helped keep me out of trouble. I think as I got a bit older, say around the ages of, from the ages of 14 to 17, we was getting involved in like petty activities, but in my area, my side of Hume, like a lot of our peer circles, there was a bit older than me, so we got into things while I was still a bit young, so such as smoking weed and certain criminal activities. But I knew that wasn't really what I wanted to get into, so then I started more chilling around people on the other side of Hume, which then later became like Mayhem Crew. So initially, before we was doing anything music-wise, we was like more on like girls and football, which was what I was into. So I think as that circle got a bit older, then we started like drifting into the same type of things what my friends from my side of Hume was getting into, and because I'd already been involved in certain things, it was just like natural to sink back into it. But I knew like that wasn't for me, and especially around them ages, like opportunities with the football was coming, and I knew like I had a really good chance to make it if I would have just kept my head down and stayed out of trouble.
Tell me about school life. What school did you go to?
I went to Trinity.
Right, okay. So what was Trinity High School like? What year did you start there?
So I started Trinity in 94.
1994. Right, yeah. Okay. And so what year would you have left there?
99.
99. Talk to me about some of your experience there. What was first day year 7 like rolling into Trinity?
First day rolling into Trinity, everyone just gathered in assembly. And I remember like from primary school, I wanted to go to Juicy, because I went to Webster Primary School, and like all my friends was going to Juicy, but my mum was having none of it.
Why was your mum not having none of it?
Just because of the reputation of Juicy, like it didn't have a good rep around them times.
For those who don't know, tell us more about Juicy and the reputation. Like what's Juicy? What is it?
So Juicy is what's known now as Manchester Academy. So back then it just had a rep for being like the toughest school in Manchester, a lot of criminal activities, like a conveyor belt, like it's like a rites of passage for criminals to go to Juicy.
And is that where you wanted to go?
That's where I wanted to go.
What made you want to go there if that's where the whole rites of passage for like criminals, that was like the dropping?
To be honest, I wasn't really thinking of it like that from primary school. It was more a case of Juicy was across the road from my primary school, all my friends was going there. It was just like, I want to go where everyone else is going. Like I didn't really want to go on my own to another school. But there was another one of the students from Webster that did end up coming to Trinity with me, who did end up being in my class as well. On my first day in school, I remember they gathered everyone into assembly, and I was sat next to my friend who I mentioned earlier, Justin, and I'd never met him before. He introduced himself to me, and we were speaking, and then coincidentally we ended up in the same class, and then we just had like an unbreakable bond throughout the whole of school.
Talk to me about year 7 to year 11 and the journey that you went on in terms of friendship circles, you as a person. Like, what was that whole experience like for you?
I think my school life, you could ask 10 different people, like, what was I like in school, and you could possibly get 10 different answers. I was a sport guy, so I was into football amongst other sports, so chill with like the people who was into sports. I was like with all the tough guys within our year as well. I'd also be around like the geeks, like playing chess and other like types of games. So
you got on with everyone pretty much. So
yeah, in class I'd say me and Justin were kind of like the class clowns as well. So I was a bit disruptive, but I think that was more based on like our learning styles not being met and being bored in class, because I do enjoy learning, but it's the way how things will be taught to me.
Okay. With that being said though, if you kind of like, in hindsight, if you're looking back on your high school education now, do you think there's any subjects that you were taught that had any relevance to your overall career progression at all, or would you kind of like go back and have a different blueprint to what you guys were actually taught during the 90s in high school?
I wouldn't necessarily say any of the classes that I learned in school bear relevance to what I do now. I did do business in school, but I didn't really like it in school. I think it's because I'm a kinesthetic learner and I'm more hands-on and trial and error. It was all theory-based in school back then. I'm not sure what it'd be like now, but it didn't really hit home with me back then. The subjects I was into was maths. I've always loved maths and PE. So those ones that I enjoyed and looked forward to. Whether I would have had PE or not, I've always had a love for football from primary school. So what happened was when we was in year 7 and we had football trials, it wasn't done to where you could assess everyone correctly. So I ended up not getting on the team. But so I played basketball the first year, and then the second year I got back into football, playing for the school team. And then that's when my friend Lee took me down to Urmston. So my first ever Sunday league game, I scored 4 goals. And I remember the second game, Manchester City coming to watch me. So from then, I knew I've got a decent chance here. And that season, I scored I think 25 goals in like 20 games. And then the following year, I played for Manchester Boys. From then, I had a trial at Walsall. So I remember getting a phone call when I was on Stretford Road, just riding on my BMX.
So you were just literally getting about on your BMX and then you get that phone call from Warsaw.
Yeah.
So what was that like? You remember, obviously you remember getting the phone call, but do you remember how you felt at that time, just to think, do you know what, I've been scoring all these goals, I've been smashing it, making a name for myself or whatever with football, but then I'm in demand now, someone actually wants to sign me.
Yeah, I remember it was when I was just around 16. I'd just left school, and I remember like in the final days of school, and someone called Jeff Thompson coming to our school, and he was like giving a public speech, and he was asking people what it would be. And I remember like me saying I wanted to be a footballer, and him saying you will be a footballer, and I thought that's different. Like, people don't usually say that. They'll usually give all the reasons why you can't make it, and I think that just helped instill some extra belief within me. And then a couple of days later, that's when I got the phone call from Walsall. So what it was, I actually sent out, I've still got the letters to this day, I sent out over 50 letters to all the football clubs, like asking for a trial. Yeah. And Walsall was the only ones that got back to me.
How did you deal with kind of like the rejection element? Like, obviously if you're sending out all these letters and then hang on a minute, like were you getting rejection letters, or were you not hearing anything back? Or
I was getting rejection letters, so just the reasons as to why they wouldn't give me a trial. So when I actually got the phone call from Walsall, and I remember like I went down, played an 11-a-side game against Stoke City, and I scored 2 bangers. Like, one was like a 30-yarder in off the post, and then the other one was like left foot outside the air, and I thought, I'm defoing. And
then, you weren't messing.
No, like, it was one of the best games I've played. Okay. But then it's like they just gave a lame excuse, because they said that they had only a limited amount of places for people on YTS, and because my birthday was like late August, they thought it was like a different age bracket, so they wouldn't be able to offer me anything. But if I need any references, they'll be able to give them to any clubs that I'm approaching. So it was a bit disheartening, but I just continued along my path and carried on. And then from then, after leaving school, me and my friend Levi, how old was I? So this was the following season after leaving school. Me and my friend Levi, we went to Altrincham. So I remember I was in the youth team in the pre-season, and in 4 games I scored like 15 goals. So I remember the first team manager coming over, speaking to a few of us, and like, I think it was between me and Levi who was going to get a chance within the reserves. And then I got pushed up to the reserves. I played 1 game, scored 1 goal. And then after that I got pushed straight into the first team. So at the age of 17, like I was playing like at a high level. I remember I got a newspaper report that was in the Manchester Evening News just as being like someone to watch out for, because I had high prospects. So I played 4 games for them, and on the 4th game we played against Manchester City. So it was a friendly match for Sean Goater because he was returning from injury. So there's a few high profile players such as Sean Wright-Phillips, Kelvin Atuhu, obviously Sean Goater. I think Joey Barton was playing that game as well, but they absolutely battered us. So I was playing left wing that game, and I played really well, and there was an agent there. So he approached me after the game and said that Bristol City interested in me and my friend that was at Altrincham at the time, Mario Daniels. So I spoke with him after the game, and he said he wants me to come down there and stay there for a few weeks. So I ended up going to Bristol for about, I think I was there for like 4 or 5 weeks. So that was a really good experience, training every day, which I wasn't used to, because it's shown the levels in my fitness from playing part-time football to how professionals train like every day, and the level of commitment. But I feel during that time there, like technical wise, I was good enough to make it, but my fitness let me down. I remember one of the days when we had to do like some running in the stadium, like running up 1 set of stairs, all the way back down, then the next row, I just wasn't fit enough. And then after that, we done like the 12-minute run. I was just getting lapped and all sorts. It's a bit embarrassing, but
what do you feel that was impacting on your actual fitness level, why you couldn't get to that level at that point in time? Was there anything, if you
looking back, I just won't put in the work in my own time. Like, based on my fitness levels at playing at Altrincham, like semi-professional, it was good enough there, but there's a big difference between full-time professional football and semi-professional. I think also around then, that was like the first experience where I saw like hints of racism. Like I remember being in the first team manager's car, and he was on the phone to a player. There was a player on loan there. Can't remember what his name was, but he was from Virginia. He was an African player, and the manager was on the phone to his agent, and he was just talking. He was like saying something about not getting stuck in, and his own agent was like, "Well, you know what these black players are like," and
that's what he said.
That's what he said.
And you heard him say that?
I heard him say it because he had it on loudspeaker.
Loud, so it was like he didn't even feel any way. It was kind of like,
he did, because I seen the manager like he clocked on in it and like ended the conversation, but I kind of like just kind of like
damage had been done.
I just kind of pretended like it was nothing, like it was just like a nonchalant, like I wasn't really fussed, but in the back of my mind I was thinking, I know what you're about. But that was just like the first thing that I come across.
Up until that point, was that the first time you'd ever encountered racism as a whole, or was the first time you did encounter racism in football?
No, that was the first time within football. After that I started seeing other things, so then when I went back to Altrincham, I went from being in the first team to not being even in the youth team. I think that was purely based on because of my agent not communicating with them that he was taking me on trial, and then they wouldn't have got a transfer fee. So at that time I just wasn't understanding what was going on. But the manager at that time, Mark Ward, he kind of messed me about, because at the time when he was offering me a contract, it's like, "Oh, we can't offer you a proper contract because you're in full-time college." And I remember going to college and like asking him, "Oh, can you change like my hours how it is so I can sign this contract?" Which they did. They adjusted everything for me
to accommodate for you.
To accommodate for me, and then and I still didn't get the contract. So I think he was a bit not happy that I ended up like trying to leave to get signed to another club and then trying to come back. So then they just didn't put me in the first team. But I remember one of the times when we was warming up with the reserves, and like there was a few black players running at the back, and they was like, "Oh, you lads, you're just coming on that. You're going on like you just come off the boat." And I was thinking,
off the boat?
Yeah.
So again, it was just straight up in your face.
Yeah.
No low-key sort of comments. It was just like, wow.
Yeah.
So how did you and the rest of the lads who heard that at the time react? Did you get angry, or like did you respond, or what did you do?
Nah, I don't know. I think it's more like looking back when you realise like more hits home, and at the time it's just like these things are normal within like football. They're just brush it off as like football banter, innit? But when you look back and you actually internalise like what was happening, then you kind of form a different perspective on things. Even after that, when we left Altrincham, I ended up going to Chester City. So there's a few players from Manchester travelling up there. Me, my friend Levi again, and another player, Rico, who was previously at Manchester City. But again, like we was like the best players on the team, but they didn't want to pay us no money. Everyone else was getting paid, but they didn't want to pay us. So that lasted for I was there for about 3 months, and then I ended up having a trial with Barbados on the 21s football team.
Why do you think at that time, like they didn't? Obviously, you guys are the best players on the team. Were you scoring goals and everything?
Yeah, we were scoring goals.
What do you think it was again? Do you think it was the racial element, or what do you think the issue was back then?
I don't know, because we had a black coach then, so he kind of he believed in us and knew the quality that we was bringing. But obviously, it's above him who's paying finances. So I think it was a case of like, oh, we'll see how you get along type of thing. But it just felt like they were stringing us along for months. And then at that time, a new manager took over the first team, Mark Wright, used to play for Liverpool. But a few months before that, he was in the papers for some racial incident. So he got done for being a racist, basically. And then he took over the team. So at that point, I was like... Oh.
So they got rid of the black coach that was there then?
No, sorry, the coach at that time, he was the coach of the reserve.
Right,
so Mark Wright took over the first team.
Right, so this guy that you already knew was like a straight up racist guy, was coming to the team. And how did that make you guys feel at the time, thinking you're already not being played, and then this guy's going to come along now? Did it make you worry at all about what the future had in store?
To be honest, that kind of made me lose hope. I think it was just before he came, I went to Barbados and had trials for Barbados under 21s football team, and that was just a whole different experience. I just felt the love. I was on TV, on the newspapers, on radio, got the headlines because I scored as well. And that was just like a different experience. And at that time as well, they was asking if there's any more players from Manchester that of Bajan descent. And my friend Rico, who was at Chester, he flew over to Barbados the day I left. Wicked. So he kind of had a similar experience. But what it was the same for both of us. Our parents wasn't born there, just our grandparents, and we was both over the age of 18.
Right.
So we would have to live there for 2 years to get citizenship. But because we was at Chester City, which was a good standard at that time, we didn't want to ruin that opportunity. So we decided to stay. And then I think it was shortly after that was when Mark Wright took over. So that kind of is like, I felt like I'd missed the opportunity with Barbados, and now like it's over here now because he's took over. There's no chance, and I think like then it was a bit of a struggle financially as well, because we have to pay to travel up there every day, not getting no income, and because we was trying to be committed with the football, I didn't want to get a job. I wanted to like give it a proper go this time, and then I think after that I was just like. I think I went into like a mild depression, to be honest, because I stopped going. Then Levi and Rico carried on going for a bit longer, but then after that I was just like, oh, you know what, I'm done.
Done with it.
Yeah.
So if we go back to the whole like racial aspect of things or whatever, that was the first time you'd experienced racism within football. What was it like for you then, growing up in the 90s as like a young black male in Manchester? Like, did you ever experience any racism at all, or were you kind of like blessed, like you said, Hume was multicultural, people got on with one another, or what was it like for you in terms of like experiencing any kind of like, whether it's different races segregating from one another, or you personally encountering racism? Did you ever come across anything like that at all?
Yeah, so what was my first experience? There was a couple incidents with my friend Lee. So one of the times when we was at football at Urmston, we was training with some older players that we don't usually play with, and one of the guys was pretty big, and he must have went in hard on my friend. And my friends punched him, So it was like, all right.
That's Lee's punched this guy.
Yeah, Lee's punched this guy.
Yeah.
So then so he said to him, all right, we'll see after it, like what you're saying and whatever. So then after the training's finished, they've got into a scrap. The guy's a lot bigger than him, and he's having up my friend in it.
Yeah.
So I've jumped in to back him up, and then he was just left. And then the following week, people were telling me that he was saying, oh, who's that coon that jumped in? So I was kind of expecting like quite a lot of them to come the following week, but nothing happened.
Was that the first time you'd heard or been called any kind of like racial slur like that or whatever?
Yeah, that's the first time it'd been directed at me. I'd obviously heard the terms before, but that was the first time directed at me. And a couple other incidents, not where they directly said anything like call me a nigger or a coon, but like in school.
Subtly sort of like...
Yeah, in school, I remember it was like a couple of weeks before we actually finished year 11, and like it was the head of our year, Mr. Hulbert. I'll never forget, he like rounded up all the black boys and was like, I'm taking you out one by one.
Is that what he said?
That's exactly what he said. And suspended us for like the daftest of reasons. So like me and Justin got suspended for cutting through a classroom. Remember Jono got suspended because he had tissue right around his head. He was just like kicking everyone out of school. For,
any
like,
trivial sort of...
any daft reason. And other incidents, there was another time me and Lee again. Lee's becoming a bit of a magnet for these incidents. Like it was 14 and like we snuck off to Blackpool because he knew some girls from, I can't remember where they were from anyway, but he arranged for us to meet them.
What year was this in high school?
So I was 14, so that would have been like year 9.
Year 9-ish around,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you guys just got off to Blackpool?
Yeah, well he was playing hockey up there anyway.
Right.
So then we kind of just stayed up there. Obviously my mum didn't know or nothing. I remember at the time she was away in Amsterdam, but I was staying at my nan and granddad.
She's gonna know after this, though, with it.
Nah, I told her now.
You told her?
Yeah, so me and Lee snuck off to Blackpool to meet these girls. And I think as we was waiting for them, I'm not sure if we'd met them at that point yet, but the police pulled up. No, I think, we was asking like a neighbour for directions. And then the police pulled up, got out. But the way how they searched me, like they took me in the back of the van, had me for ages, taking everything off, pretty much stripped me down, searching everything, and just gave my friend Lee a little pat down. And then basically said, right, if we see you again tonight, we're going to arrest you. I was thinking, what? I'm not even doing nothing wrong.
Like, no rhyme or reason or anything.
Yeah, but because I'd snuck off there, I just thought, nah, I'm not even like...
Try to come off on the radar.
Yeah. I just thought, like, forget it, let me just get back to money and allow it. So yeah, that like raised my eyebrows a bit.
So how did, like, obviously, because by this point, you and Lee are proper tight, yeah? So how did he start reacting to, like, the times when it used to happen, like, these racial incidents, and he was actually there to witness it? Did that kind of ever test your friendship together, or did it make you guys stronger as a friendship, or did you ever discuss it at the time?
I can't remember how we spoke about it back then, but we've spoke about it recently. Like, I went to his wedding, like, only last month, and we've been speaking a bit recently as well, and it was brought up in conversation. But yeah, he fully understands it because he even messaged me after watching When They See Us. I had a conversation about how much it annoyed him and how much it got him angry. So yeah, he fully relates, and he's always been someone who's been in touch with black culture. Like, he was one of the white guys that was around, like all the cool black guys in our year, so he gets it, innit? He understands.
What did you think? What was your thoughts on When They See Us or whatever? Did you get vexed halfway through or into it, or did you watch it till the end?
I've just watched episode 1. I couldn't go any further. I wouldn't like. I felt like I didn't want to watch it the same way how I don't watch police brutality. So I just feel like it's just, I think it's too traumatizing for black people to watch. Like, I feel it's good. I'm glad that they've got their story out there because it's much needed. But I feel like it's for people who, you know, like people who say, oh, there's no smoke without fire, and who think the justice system's fair. So I think it's more for them to see like what actually happens, because this is just one story of thousands. Like, the justice system isn't designed for the black person to get a fair trial, and yeah, this was just another prime example of it. So
What do you feel needs to kind of like change in? Well, let's talk about the UK. What do you feel needs to change in the judicial system in the UK to ensure that like people of colour as a whole get like a fair trial when it comes to like dealing with their certain situations if they've been alleged to commit crime and stuff like that?
I think it, a lot of it boils down to power. I feel like black people we don't have enough power, and that's why this is allowed to continually happen to us. So if you look at other races who are in power, these types of things don't continuously happen to them. I feel like for us to not be in this situation where we're always the victim, I feel like there's so many divides between black people that we just need to be unified and seen as one. So like with Chinese people, they're just Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Black people, I feel we all just need to identify ourselves as African.
Mm-hmm.
I feel Africa needs to just know its power, and just once Africa knows its power and utilize its resources correctly and stops being taken advantage and signing daft deals and all the corruption, I feel like if we do at some point have a unified Africa with one currency, one passport, one military, and then all the diaspora associate themselves with that, then that will just be powerful within itself. And I feel that's part of the steps that we need to take to restore power within us. And I feel that things like these situations that are currently happening will happen less. Like we're in a foreign habitat. We shouldn't be in these places in the first place.
I hear what you are saying. Before we get into this about the foreign habitat thing, and before we get into it or whatever, you made a point there in terms of, like, you feel that black people as a whole should all identify as Africans, and like for most parts I agree with what you're saying, but then I can give you an example in terms of, let's go back to the barbershop or whatever. I could be in a barbershop setting, and I have been in the past, and African people have come into like a Caribbean barbershop. They're kind of like empowered, they know the history, and they start trying to not kind of like instill it in them, but you know, explaining to them about our roots, culture and stuff like that. And Caribbean people are like, nah, what do you mean I'm not African? Like, do you know one of them? And like, how do we kind of break down that barriers to trying to educate our brothers and sisters to say, well, actually, do you know what? You are actually, that was the motherland. Yeah. That was like...
I've had these same conversations with my grandparents.
Where'd you go with it?
Because one of my nanas were like, no, I'm not African, I'm Bayesian. Well, other nana from St. Kitts, like, she's down in it, she gets it, like, yeah, we're African, like, yeah. So I feel like we're in the information age now, so they can't just hide everything in the books like they have done. Like, we can access this information and we can look up like our history. So I feel it's just important to teach the youths from the get-go, like the true value of where we've come from, and not just what they teach in schools, like with slavery and everything, like predating slavery. Like we've come from geniuses, like the things that we've built on this planet that are still standing. We need to understand these things and identify ourselves with these things, because I feel if you know that you come from greatness, then you know that you can achieve greatness. Whereas if you just believe that you just come from slavery, then you're not going to think highly of yourself, and you're going to restrict yourself with how far you see yourself achieving.
Okay. So if we kind of like rewind then, obviously we spoke about the football situation, you told me about that. You mentioned earlier on in the interview about Mayhem Crew, and I've been dying to kind of like ask you about that, because I remember back in the day when obviously we've kind of like got drill and grime is like the young people's era now, but I remember back in the day when for us it was like garage was and like our sort of thing, do you know what I mean? I remember sometimes you kind of like hear mentions of these crews, almost like your Mayhems, kind of like your Floss Modes, to name a few from back in the day, but like I don't kind of like feel enough about them is mentioned. So talk to me about Mayhem. Let's get into it, man. Tell me first and foremost, who were Mayhem and how did they come about? How did they start?
So Mayhem was a group of us, like predominantly from Hume and some from Old Trafford, and Mayhem came about at the end of like when things didn't work out with my football with Chester City. So around the same time when I kind of left Chester City and was a bit like down and whatever, like music helped pick me back up. So it was New Year's Eve, 2001.
Wow.
When we went to Huddersfield and bought our first set of decks.
So you went as a collective to Huddersfield?
Yeah,
like
two cars deep. Because I think
Wow.
we must have went to Huddersfield like a couple months before to link some girls.
Yeah.
And remember, like we seen the decks in the shop and was like, oh, we need to come back and get these. So we all like put two. And remember, we got to the shop like about 5 minutes before it shut.
Wow.
So we got the decks. There was stored at LeKen's house, and then that was the beginning of Mayhem. So I think like.
Sorry to cut you again. So you're not at that point in time for you guys, and obviously you were kind of like feeling down about the whole football thing not working out. The other guys that were part of the Mayhem Collective back then, were they kind of going through similar points in their life to what you were going through back then, and you kind of like got together through music, or what were they all doing at that point in time? What were most of them doing?
Well, it was more me and Levi who was like taking the football serious. So like both of our like aspiring careers kind of took a hit then. So with the music, I think around then you could tell like which crews was influenced by who. So like with Floss Mode, you could see like they was more influenced by Heartless. But with Mayhem, we was more like about lyrics. So we was like more like Nasty Crew. So that's like the comparison. So even like around the times, like I remember in Levi's, like we'd split into like halves, and like half the MCs would go in one room with a cordless mic and half in stay in like the room where the decks are, and like everyone would just clash each other. Like it was just all about clashing in it.
How many of you guys, like, if you could say like list of Mayhem members or original members as a crew, how many of you went? Because I remember being at certain raves or parties back in the day, and you guys were mob deep when you used to come into the spot. There was a lot of you guys. About how many? Because I never knew. I just used to see you move together, thinking, "Raz, there's a lot of cats here."
You know what? It's just like there was the music guys, but then there was just like just guys from Hume that just like were never officially Mayhem, but because we was all like one. There's just like, and the spit, they just like naturally become like Mayhem. So probably like 15 to 20 of us, to be honest. But the serious ones, I don't know. I try not to be offensive. He was serious, but no, not. But Ren was the main guy in it. Ren was like ahead of his time. Ren Danger.
So Ren Danger, was he a DJ or did he spit? What did he do?
Ren spat. Ren spat. Ren was probably, I'd say, like the main grime guy back then. I'd say like me and Levi weren't really the best DJs. So then when K1 came in, like that's when like Mayhem was probably at its peak with K1. Ren, Killer and Pingu, like that was like the elite of Mayhem. Like everyone else who wasn't really taking it serious. Then like KO and Oz formed a squadron, which was like hip hop. So then they kind of branched off doing their own thing. Around that time, like when I stopped DJing, I think it was just too costly because it was vinyls back then. I was just like spending all my money on vinyls and not seeing no return. Like, and I was more interested in behind the scenes stuff. So around that time was like when like I kind of met you at college. Yeah. Doing music technology, and I was more while I was on that course, and it was a lot of like the technological side of music. I more formed an interest in like the behind the scenes side of stuff, like management. But I didn't know how to go about it. So kind of like when Mayhem split up, like I just like got rid of my vinyls. Remember gave like Blade some of my vinyls and he was shutting them off in school. And but yeah.
So what was kind of like the demise, like the end game for them? Like you said, certain members weren't taking it seriously as they should have been at the time, and then
I think, you know what, I think we were just we just weren't. We was just like guys on petty criminal activity. Some was getting deeper into it, some wasn't. And I think like guys just started just getting into other things that like strayed away from the music. And then I don't know what happened with the demise. No, that's it. So then the next generation of Mayhem came, and they was like taking it a lot serious. So that was like Shifty, Slayer, Sphinx, like them man. And like I think we just kind of like left the mantle to them to like push the name Mayhem out there. So a lot of people who know Mayhem probably only know of them because they took it like on a bigger stage. They won't even know like how it formed and the origins of Mayhem. So yeah.
Did you ever have any regrets? And you know, kind of like when you got rid of the decks and you kind of like let it go, were you kind of thinking when you saw the youngers come through to take it to the next level that you were kind of like, oh, do you know what we could have done, should have done, or would have been able to do that? Or were you kind of like thinking, do you know what, it's their time now to do it, I'm doing my production behind the scenes sort of thing?
No, I have no regrets. I think like I just naturally progressed. So around that time I moved out the area, that was it. Yeah, I ended up moving, my mum moved. And then I was around like other music circles, so that's when I was like started chilling with Rigs and Licks around Hit 'em Up, around Golden, and then so that's when I more naturally transpired into being a manager. So I was like managing them. Things was like picking up in terms of like getting shows. Like they was more serious. Like that was like the start of the mixtape era. So we'd be like hitting like Market Street was popping. You could go there and make like a couple hundred in a day. I got Rigs and Licks like a deal where I got like Double Trouble, so I got them some funding for that, some investment. Like that's when Golden and Shao started doing like the music videos with them. Like looking back then, I think the opportunity what was missed was the YouTube era. Like they should have like formed a YouTube channel around then. We was more looking at like DVDs, like releasing a DVD. So we did release a DVD called The Sickest Lyricist.
Was that kind of like the times of like Lord of the Mics?
Yeah, so this was around the time of Lord of the Mics. So we released a DVD called The Sickest Lyricist. But what we should have been doing was just like forming a YouTube channel and just like putting out like things on there and build that up. So that was an opportunity missed. And then Hit 'em Up, we've done a couple of things, we got a couple of shows. There was like loads of different changes within Hit 'em Up. Like the main two was Rigs and Licks at that time when I joined, but they'd like come from like a branch off of the previous Hit 'em Up, which was like about 10 of them. And then OG kind of got back involved with Rigs and Licks. And then there was like a time where different individuals would come in the mix. So Nia J was involved at one point. Even Shotty Horror was like part of Hit 'em Up for like a month or something. And then then they was like working a lot closely with Shifty. And then things just transpired from there. And then like that's when we started getting into the events. So the first event we done was at Music Box with Getz and Wiley. But yeah, we got a really good turnout.
So how did you get to a point where you were like on a level whereby you were making links with like Getz and Wiley, where you could actually get them to come and do shows? Was it in Manchester the shows were at?
Yeah, it was in Manchester.
So you made movements from like, because I remember at college when we were doing obviously the music technology aspects of things, but I always remember you were always actively doing something to do with like your progression in terms of like your music career and everything like that. But how did you kind of like up the game to get to that level where you were making links with London artists like that?
So around that time, that's when Wiley actually moved to Manchester. So it's like he was like scouting who was the hottest talent within Manchester. And kind of started, that was the beginning of him forming a good friendship with Riggs. So that was the beginning of him forming a good friendship with Riggs. So initially, I can't remember what price he charged. But he actually didn't turn up to the first event. We just had guests.
Didn't turn up?
No.
So did he give you a kind of heads up or anything, or did he not turn up?
No, but this is typical Wiley, innit? He's known for not turning up to events. But
so how did
there
you
was a bit of an incident at that event as well, which I won't go into. But,
right, okay. Say no more.
He did come back and do an event for us for free later on. Like,
did you get an apology? Did you get an explanation or an apology?
I didn't ask for one. To be honest, I was just happy that he'd done it for free, innit? Like, he made up. People weren't really asking, oh, where's Wiley or anything. I think they was happy with Getz's performances.
Right.
Getz smashed it, innit?
Outside of him not turning up in the incident at the event, how did it go and were you feeling
well,
like
actually, we was happy with the event because considering it was our first event, like, we all put money into it, but it was like, I pretty much done all the event management for it and they like done all the promotion and whatever because like MySpace was popping then, so they knew how to draw in the crowd. So considering it was like trial and error, I wasn't getting advice and guidance from anyone. I was really pleased with what I'd done, and that like opened up my interest into going down into bigger and better events, which later transpired towards doing events such as like the Apollo and promo at things like MEN Arena. So that was a good period of time.
Who's your favourite if you had to, out of the two of them, like?
Oh, Gets all day.
All
day long. Gets and Wretch, like my guys in it from like years ago. So
what's your opinion on like the current state of affairs with like similar genres now, like grime and drill, and the impact that it's having on our young people these days?
I feel obviously music does have an impact on the young people, but I don't like that we a lot of people try to solely blame the music.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel there's a lot more heavily influential things within our paradigm that we're taking in. So films is audio and visual, whereas music's just audio. So why are we not blaming like all the films, like these violent films that we're seeing? How come the focus is on music? Like music's a form of expression, so the young people are expressing themselves. It defo does have an impact on them, especially if they're vulnerable young people and they're taking on board what all these people are rapping about, and then they feel like this is what I need to do to build up my reputation and whatnot. But how do we counteract that? That's the question. And I feel...
Do you feel it is almost like a, like drill, if we talk about drillers in particular, do you feel it is sort of like a easy scapegoat for like the government and people to say, well, do you know what, these young people are behaving unruly or they're stabbing each other, it's drill music, kind of like, you know, coming up even before our era, it was kind of gangster rap. Do you feel it is like a sort of like modern day sort of scapegoat to say for these young people, yeah, this is what's to blame?
I think it's if it wasn't getting the attention, then they probably wouldn't feel the need to continue it. Whereas, like, I feel like when we was coming up, like in the early 90s, like hip hop was different in it. There was people like Public Enemy who was raising positive vibrations amongst people, and then you've seen people like NWA coming out. So I feel like, without taking it too deep, there was an agenda to push that type of music to derail us. So maybe that's like similarly to what's happening now, but yeah, maybe that's similar to what's happening now. But I feel like maybe we shouldn't purely focus on just how drill music's impacting the people. There's other preventionary measures we can put in place, like yeah, we can't just blame the music. I feel that's just scapegoating the music. Obviously it does impact people, but there's other underlying factors that are influencing the way how society is at the moment. And I feel like it's not I feel like it's not just black people. Like if like Akala touches on it a lot within his book Natives, and he paints the picture perfectly. And I feel if we have people like that like stating facts, then it paints a better picture rather than people just taking an easy path and just saying like it's just black people when it's not.
Do you feel like the media more kind of like catered towards portraying that it is a black issue, but then you've got the likes of Akala and Low Key when they actually break down the figures and everything and then start telling us as a whole? Or cause I know like Akala, big fan, and I've watched him school on a regular before, or whatever, when he actually says, because I'm sure he touched on, I think, was it Scotland or somewhere, and he was looking at their
Glasgow,
Glasgow, their knife crime rate in comparison, but he was kind of like touching, I don't know if, I can't remember if he actually said it specifically, but he was kind of like saying, do you know what, is it because like Glasgow's predominantly white in the areas that this happened and it's not getting the media attention as kind of like suburban or urban London, if we call it? Yeah,
they've defo got their own agendas in what they want to portray. It's like similar with the myth of black fathers not being present in families' lives. Like that's an agenda what the media heavily push, but when you look at the statistics, it's not actually how they're portraying it to be. So they do have their motives for multiple reasons, but yeah, I think it's just up to us to spread the truth. So if we know better, then do better. And I think we just need to create the solutions that can counteract what is happening. Like if we actually sit down with the youth and speak to them and say, why is it that you're feeling like you need to do this? What do you feel you can do to bring you out of this situation? Like I was having a conversation the other day with someone called Robin Travis. So he's wrote 3 books, but he's going to be coming down towards the end of the year to do like a workshop type seminar with the young people. But on the way I was breaking things down, it's like people need to hear what this brother's got to say, because he's changing lives literally.
That's a big shout, man.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like you then, we go back to you and, you know, business ventures and stuff like that. Tell us about some of the stuff that you're doing currently business wise. And I know you're always active doing something positive in the community. I can never catch up with you, but tell us about like your first projects and give us an idea of what else you're doing, like business wise.
My business journey would have started with the events, like that just opened my mind up to different things. Like I always had an interest in business, because my first course when I left school was business at college before doing music technology. But again, it was more theory. Like I needed to do something hands-on and practical, and trial and error. So that's what the actual first event I done was, trial and error, and just learning from whatever mistakes I might have made and what would I have done different. So from then on, I ended up having my own recording studio. That was a bit more serious. So it was just like working out how to do the marketing and drawing the numbers with that. From then, I'm more like, my life kind of had a bit of a shift, I'd say about 5 years ago, when like I just felt like I'd reached a point where like just certain changes I was making. So like, was it 5 years ago? About 4 years ago, like I ended a relationship I was in. It was nothing. No, I don't even want to go into it here. So my life changed about 4 years ago, and like just certain things I started doing differently and looking at things differently. So that's when like my vegan journey started accelerating, and I'd took voluntary severance from work. I was like, you know what, I'm sick of working. I know it's about ownership. Let me just like jump in the deep end and try something. So then I got a business loan to start a food van. So initially it was just going to be Caribbean food. But then as I was like changing my diet, it didn't fit right morally and ethically within me to be feeding people food that I feel is going to be causing more harm than good to them. So then initially I changed it. I was just going to do like vegetarian and pescatarian, and then I went full vegan myself. So then I thought, you know what, this has to be full vegan. So then the day before I was due to open, like the chef just like got cold feet and backed out.
After you got the business loan?
After I had everything, done the van up, kitted it up, had all the promo out there. I just felt the love from everyone supporting it, sharing it. I got like over 50 shares or something. So it was like, it was about in it. And then like on the day before, he like said, like he didn't want to do it. I was like, I just wanted to curl up and just wanted the ground to swallow me. I remember like, oh, that was horrible.
So what did you do? Like, how did you kind of like overcome that then? Because obviously the chef's not looking to turn up. You're getting all these shares. People are like in anticipation, thinking, right, Otis Thomas, this is like the next big thing. And you think you got no chef? Like, what?
Yeah,
what
I just put out a status saying, sorry to inform you, but the shop won't be open today, or something like that, and just locked my phone off before I can't be bothered.
Just locked away from the world.
Yeah.
And
I remember like a year or so after it, like when people would ask me about it and like just not even wanting to have a conversation about it, but it made me like reflect back to like a lot of the musicians I was working with, and like when things didn't pop off for them the way it did, and like how they must have felt, like people asking them, oh, what's going on with your music, and like them just like not wanting to engage in those type of conversations and not wanting to be sociable, and just more like staying in and being more introverted and just avoiding people because of like I could just relate to what they was going through. But yeah, that's just part of the journey, innit? You got to fail your way to the top and just take them L's and learn from them. Like it's not a loss, it's a lesson, and I'm glad that it happened because I learned a lot from that, and certain things that I do different. And even like, I'm glad I didn't end up working with this chef, because my partner now, she's like the best vegan cook I know of. So me and her ended up going into business together, but I took a different approach. So I ended up selling a van. So we started selling food from home and doing deliveries, and it's a different path, because the van was just the path to to end up with a restaurant.
Right, wicked.
So we're still aiming towards that, but things were on hold because obviously we had a baby and whatnot. But yeah, when we're ready to pick that back up, we'll work back towards it. But
okay, so tell us what the name of the current business is that you're running at the moment, and what does it sort of like entail? Like obviously you started off with a food van, didn't go to plan, but then a brilliant thing happened because you got with your partner that you're with now, and everything. Now you've set up this business together. So tell us about that.
So yeah, the food business is called Soul Vibrations, but we'll probably, when we relaunch, we'll probably brand it under a different name, just purely based on there's a lot of similar names at the moment, like Soul V, Plant-Based Vibrations, whole time my friend Levi. Yeah, so we just wanted to do something a bit different now, so there's no confusion because there's a lot of similar names.
Okay, so obviously like you're a young black entrepreneur, business guy from Manchester. What do you feel, if you can kind of like say what are the contributing factors or what are the main issues that you think stop like black people from just like going out on a limb and creating their own business, kind of like what you've done?
I think it's just belief. I think it's just the way how we're trained even from school, because we're told, go to school, get good qualifications so you can get a good job. Like we just have limited aspirations. Like I think a lot of the time we're aiming towards getting a good job rather than like owning our own business, which I think is key. That's one of the main messages I like to spread to black people. Like it's about ownership. Like if you look at other cultures, like they're owning things and we're building up other people's empires, and it's leaving us in predicaments where we've got no power, and that's why we're taken advantage of and we're victims to the court system.
What do you think are the fundamentals of having a successful black business in 2019 and beyond?
I think we need to not specifically focus on our target audience being black. So if you look at other cultures, like for example Chinese food and Indian food, they're not just targeting Chinese or Indian people, it's open to everyone, because I think we're restricting ourselves when we're just focusing our customers on black people. I feel like there's certain negative stigmas that we associate with ourselves, like whereas like we've heard like all the talk before regarding like black businesses, or you know, like if they've not got things in stock or whatever, and like the customer service isn't great. But if you have that same experience with like another business from other race, do you part that same energy, say, oh, I'm not going back there? Like I think we just need to not be as hard on ourselves, rather than saying I'm gonna boycott this shop. Why not like give them tips and advice on how they can improve their customer service or just the business in general, instead of just saying that I'm not going to support them.
Do you think that's something that's kind of like more so pertaining to us as black people, that once we've had bad customer service somewhere, it's kind of like kiss teeth, I'm not going back there, or I'm going to get online, I'm going to write a bad review.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was like sort of like Pizza Hut or I don't know, your local chain restaurant, as much as vexed you'd be, you're thinking, no, do you know what, you're still coming back next weekend for a takeaway.
So I mean, like, yeah, we need to keep that same energy when we're giving people bad reviews. When we have a bad experience, when we have a good experience, give them a good review. Like, just where's the balance? You always hear about the bad stuff. Where's all the good stuff? Because I'm sure there's more good things happening within black businesses than bad things.
And do you feel that kind of like rings true with black people as well when it comes to helping each other with businesses, in terms of like, obviously we'll give each other bad feedback, but do you feel we're not coming together enough to progress forward in businesses?
I feel like we have often this this affiliation that we can only have like one business that does this one thing. So if you look at like Winslow Road, for example, there's loads of businesses selling the same thing. But I feel like as black
prospering,
people,
selling the same thing as well. Yeah,
exactly. So I just don't think I think we just need to change our perspective on certain things. Like you can have more than one person doing the same thing if the market's big enough. So for example, with like the plant-based food that I was providing, the meal deliveries, since doing it, there's now like quite a few different options, and I'll promote the same people, same way, because the market's big enough for us all to be successful. So we don't need to like see it as a bad thing because someone else is doing something what you was doing. Like everyone just push each other and push. It's like the market's big enough for plant-based meals to spread accordingly and for everyone to be successful, because it's a growing industry, it's £1 billion industry, and there's enough for everyone to eat. So let's just all work to see how we can work together and push it out there for everyone to be successful.
So in regards to business and everything now, like you being successful as you have been, what entrepreneurs have you looked up to, and like who have you kind of like followed on their journey, who's like inspired you along the way?
Why am I aiming? Yeah, so Elon Musk is one of my favourite entrepreneurs, just in regards to him doing things that's never been done before, and just not allowing other people's opinions to derail him off track. Another one is Gary Vee. So Gary Vee, like I watched him like every day for like 2 years, because I've got a keen interest in marketing, specifically digital marketing. I feel like I learned a lot from him. Like even read two of his books, Crushing It and Jab, 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 Right Hook. Another one of my favourite entrepreneurs was Nipsy Hustle. So not even necessarily as a musician, just in regards to how he was as a businessman, and just the way he's approached with the music, like what he done with his Proud to Pay campaign, and even like certain book recommendations that he gave. One was called Contagious, so I feel I learned a lot from that book, and it just made me learn certain things from that book, what he was instilling within his music campaigns. Another one of my favourite entrepreneurs is Kevin Hart, and not even necessarily as a comedian, again similar to Nipsey Hustle, just what he's doing in regards to his approach in how he functions as a businessman. So
in terms of like, you know, you mentioned Nipsey as like being like one of the main guys you looked up to and everything, that inspired you and everything. What was you kind of like thoughts and views on everything that went down with him from like what you know so far? Because I know there was a lot of conspiracy theories going around and everything.
I don't want to go into that one on the camera. I don't want to open that kind of worms.
Right, okay. But like you said, it was kind of like, were you surprised what happened to him? Would you answer that much?
Yeah, it was.
Or did you kind of like think, you know what, like when we look at similar people coming up in our communities, where it's almost like...
When Nipsey died, I didn't realise like how much of an emotional reaction, how can I word this? When Nipsey died, I didn't realise how much a celebrity's death could impact me until I seen how it affected me when he passed away. And it made me realise, like, you know, when you see people like saying they're upset when a celeb's died that they've never met or whatever, I could never relate to it until this happened. For wow, it was just on my mind loads. I was just thinking about it all the time. And like I didn't actually get to meet him or anything, although we did purchase tickets to go see him in concert in Amsterdam a few years ago, but then he changed the date, so we didn't actually get to go. But yeah, he was definitely a big inspiration and someone that I looked up to.
What sort of legacy do you think he's left, like, just for people, fans in general? Like, do you think, will he be one of these names that 10, 30, 40 years from now we'll still remember him as the guy who made the massive difference? Or
I would hope so. Just even like things like the world's first smart store, what he created with Idris Sandu. So since his passing, like I knew of Idris when I seen him on a video with Gary Vee and Nipsey when it was together, but like I just looked a lot deeper into him after Nipsey passed, and like I feel like he is going to have such a massive impact on this planet before his time's up. As long as it's not taken away from us early, he's going to do so many different great things. He's already done great things at such a young age, but I feel like Nipsey now, what he was trying to do with Idris was trying to make it cool for like the smart creators within our community. Like I feel like within black culture, we adore like sports and music stars, but we need to like pay homage to like the black versions of Elon Musk and like they're not really known. We don't like put them up on a pedestal, and someone like Idris, I feel, is capable of changing this planet. And yeah, I just love everything that he's doing and all his plans and just his message. So he's something that I've been strongly looking into.
Wicked, man.
And also Nipsy's other partner, Dave Gross, in regards to property investment and with a project that I've got called Our Opportunity. So with Nipsey, he started something called Vector 90. I'm not sure the correct terminology, I can't remember. It was like a building where people can rent units from, and they'll hold like certain workshops and training.
Yeah.
But on the ground floor of that building, he also had something called Too Big to Fail, which was a STEM project. So for those who don't know, STEM is science, technology, engineering and maths. So that was set up for the young people to come there and learn different skills. And then also it was like a conveyor belt to Silicon Valley. So with his connection with Idris has already done work with like a lot of the top social media platforms. So that was like a conveyor belt for young people from the hood to go and learn these necessary skills to then be able to access certain opportunities within Silicon Valley.
What you're reading at the moment, or what sort of inspired you along the way, book-wise, that you thought, you know what, you've read it, you've not been able to put it down, or you've read it and taken action and to make changes, positive changes in your life straight away after reading it?
Yeah, there's many different books that you read for different reasons. So in regards to marketing, I felt like Contagious was a big one, which I've not necessarily started implementing yet, but I will do with my new product launch, which I'm working on, which hopefully should be ready in the next 3 to 4 months. But that one's basically the 6 principles in making content go viral. So another book I read was Jab, 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 Right Hook. So that's by Gary Vee. So he just basically goes through all the different social media platforms and breaks down like what's a good post, what's a bad post, etc. In regards to business in general, I think it's just you have to, depending on what your mind state is going into it, you have to you just have to tool yourself, arm yourself up with the correct tools to approach this industry correctly. So certain books I'm in the process of reading or read, such as Black Box Thinker. So that's a good book. Hold tight, Jermaine Creeley. You recommended that. What else would I say? So The Power of the Subconscious Mind. That was recommended to me by my friend Dwayne Bryan. That's a really good book. And then there's certain basic ones, not basic, but ones that I like known, what people know about, such as Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. Another book I did like was Black Privilege by Charlemagne. So I like the way how he done that book, because it was kind of like an autobiography, but it wasn't titled as an autobiography. So in that book, he's just going through the 8 principles on what he believes you need to go through to be successful. So he's like telling you about his life story, but certain situations that he went through that he overcame to achieve the success and the level that he's currently at.
Wicked, man. So for you now, it's moving forward. What's the next step for you in like your career or your movements, like from your business or your own personal sort of progression or whatever? What's the next step for you from here?
So for me, like I'm happy to share my ideas, because I feel people think you can't. I think people like hold ideas close to the chest, but if you've not got the skill set, the resources, or the network to execute on those ideas, then it's irrelevant. So with myself, like I just see myself as an entrepreneur, and happiness is the main thing. And I'm happy like grinding and building things up. So there's many different things that I'd like to do, not just restrict myself to one thing. So currently now, I've got a business called New Link, where we was doing like monthly deliveries of different products. But now I'm working on changing the model of that business. So we was working with different suppliers and selling their products. But now I'm more focused on setting up Amazon fulfillment to do the delivery and have that integrated in the back end of our website. So all the sales there dealing with the distribution, and then we can just focus on the marketing. So we've sourced a few suppliers from Africa and other places for our products, which we're just in the process of branding and packaging. So yeah, hopefully that should be ready within the next 3 to 4 months, I'd say. So once that becomes successful, I plan to push with my media company. So I also offer content creation and social media management. So my superfood product range will be like the prime example of me proving with what I've learned, how I can make it successful, and then I'd start pushing out those services regarding the social media management and content creation. Along with that, we'll like build back up with New Link, but along with our own products, we'll start working with other suppliers and distributing their products, like focus on the Northwest to start with and then push further out, hopefully branch out to like our own store. Like in the ideal world, what I'd like is to import from like a lot of places within the Caribbean and Africa to where we have a central hub over here in the UK, and we have our own stores nationwide, our own franchise, and then we just distribute amongst those franchises. So,
is there anyone doing that solely in the UK at the moment, or will you be one of the first sort of people to kind of like do something like that?
There's no one that I'm aware of that's doing it on the level that I envision that I'd like to achieve that on. But yeah, the idea's out there. If someone's capable of achieving it, like go ahead, I'm all for it. Like I feel like a lot of my ideas I'm trying to do because no one's doing them. So if someone else can do them, then I'm happy for someone to do it. Like go ahead and do it. I don't mind like if someone like does my idea and they're able to execute it even better than that. That's great, because my idea is for the betterment of black people as a whole. So if I'm not doing it, then I'm happy for someone else to do it. So
it's refreshing to hear that though, you know, and I can be honest with you and say that still, because I think kind of like what you said, I think sometimes us as people, and yeah, other races do, but I think more so with us, we come up with this ingenious idea, but it's kind of like, oh, do you know what, I can't tell anyone else, but then we don't kind of like have the resources or the ability or the know-how to take it to that next level, where I can't help but feel if we actually networked together as people, it could get to that level. It just means you kind of like trusting people. And I know a lot of people, even who I know, entrepreneurs, are like, well, nah, you can't trust my man with that, or like he might rob your idea. But then it's kind of like, I think the point you made before, there's enough out there for everyone to eat.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just changing your mind state. And we've got a long way to go, but we're getting there though. I can see certain changes happening, and I'm happy with the way things are transpiring.
Wicked, man. Well, Otis, thanks again, brother. Thanks for taking the time out.
Yeah,
and
no, appreciate you.
Like, we're gonna have to get you back on the show again. Hopefully, give us an update, should I say, on where you're up to with the businesses, and wish you all the best with it, man.
Definitely, much appreciated, bro.
All right,
thanks for having me.
Nice one, man. Thank you.